I'm decided to embark on this entrepreneurial path, I guess, at what you'd maybe say is a midpoint in my career, kind of to your point, having done a few rounds at a couple startups, an acquisition, spent some time at Google. And what was initially got me excited about wanting to start a company was I think living some of these pain points, you just start to, if you're building and you're kind of struggling to grow and scale and lead teams, you also can take a moment to kind of look around and say, hey, there's some stuff that's really broken here and feels really inefficient and feels really repetitive and just could be done a lot better. And I think when, as you said, the AI revolution started to really get its kind of momentum going, that got me very excited because a lot of the pain points I had started thinking about were really tied to a lot of silos of data, and I was seeing a lot of people having to spend a lot of time bringing context and data together and then creating these massive summaries, narratives, like how do we talk about, so what Korl does is we really help customer-facing teams come up with the slides, the talk tracks, et cetera, to talk to their customers about how to get the most value out of the products they're selling. It's a massive manual lift historically. There's entire teams of people who have to do that, gather the data, put it together in a way that's personalized for each customer or company. And that for me, when I started to see the power that AI gives us to scale in terms of taking a lot of context all at once, way more than any human could ever keep in their mind, bringing it together and then giving us an output that's really personalized and high value and facilitates a human interaction, that's what I got excited about.
Amazing. And Brooke, so you also were at Google, and then you stayed at Google, but you went to Waymo.
Fun fact is that Berit and I actually worked on our first team together.
Oh, that's right.
And Berit led product, and I was a new grad on the team. So I think that Bebop is actually where I ended up really loving the early stage team, because Bebop was the best team ever. I think everyone was very close and you felt like you were building something together.
Yeah. Well, so you guys were at least on the early stages of the revolution, maybe ahead of it in machine learning. But at Waymo is when you really kind of had the genesis of the idea for Coval, because you were building LLM evaluation tools, which is the idea you took into Y Combinator and then refined it a little bit for voice agents. Really just interested for you to tell the audience kind of how the last year has been. Since you were in YC and since you've been building a company, you've now got lots of customers. Have you guys had to pivot? Has it been kind of what you expected? And then, of course, how is the technology allowing you to do exactly what you're doing?
Yeah, so we're building simulation and evaluation for voice agents based on my background in self-driving. And I think over the last year, it's been really cool to see voice really take off. I think LLMs and chatbots obviously took off in 2023. And then I think as that progressed, we finally saw this moment last summer where the reasoning capabilities of GPT-4o became good enough that you could have a long conversation with an agent and have an agent that could autonomously try to achieve an objective. And so the past year has just been crazy in terms of the voice adoption because of that big shift where the models became cheap enough and the reasoning became good enough that you could have these long conversations. And that has been super exciting to see, is actually a lot of the formation of the infrastructure layer. There are so many open questions on the new frontier of how do you even do testing? How do you even build out? What are the modules that you need? What does voice architecture look like? So that's been super exciting.
Terrific. And then just to continue the introduction, so Korl and Coval are both Fund 3 companies, so relatively recent investments for Mac in the past year. Pareto, which Phoebe founded, is a Fund 1 company, right at the end of Fund 1.
I was here first. So.
Yeah, so I really want you to talk about kind of how you started and the pivot, which really led into, I think, getting into data labeling. It's been a big week for data labeling as we talk, by the way. But I love the one quote on your Twitter where you say, keeping humans relevant. I think that's something that lots of people like to talk about, but that's exactly what you're doing at Pareto. So why don't you tell people about the company? Obviously, it couldn't be done if we weren't having the AI revolution that we're having. And then it'd be interesting, as much as you want to talk about the pivot that you made.
Yeah, I've made 3 pivots in the past 5 years of having this company. It's my first company. Dropped out of school to start this. Never thought I'd be in a situation here to talk about something that was, I mean, business is apparently working, so
Right.
Thanks for inviting me.
We'll get into that too. It's working very well.
Well, I dropped out of school in 2020 when COVID hit, and the motivation was very naive. It was like, let me try to find some way to build systems that could help people access work. Because I had studied human-computer interaction when I was in college. My parents immigrated from China. They lost their jobs. My dad has a PhD in engineering, and he became a truck driver. So growing up, I was always like, what is happening? Like, what is wrong with our systems for economic opportunity? So I started Pareto originally as a virtual assistant company, and we upskilled stay-at-home moms in the Philippines during COVID. And now I'm a venture-backed startup, so there were lots of pivots between then and now. But we discovered that there are systems we can build to make people work more effectively on any kind of task. And originally we were thinking of doing that for startup operations, but in 2023, AI landed in our lab, and our first customer was Character AI. Helped them develop some pretty state-of-the-art models that were like way before their time. They were thinking about agents in 2023, like 2 years ago. So we got really lucky with that connection. And then now we're working with Google DeepMind, Amazon, Anthropic, a lot of the leading AI labs. And that was, in our third and hopefully final pivot. So it's been a while.
Great. How many employees are you up to now?
All right, last I counted, I have 140 people on our all hands last month. I think we are in a position where when we start building a relationship with one lab, it's just FOMO. Like all the other labs they're all in this rat race. And I think we have to be pretty thoughtful about how much we share about what we do, because the more we share, the more we give away what each of the labs, how they're approaching the next release. So we want to show up in a way that's like upstanding, but we also want to show that like, hey, we ourselves as the data providers are at the frontier of this field. So we've invested in building our own lab internally, bringing researchers internally in to think about where the industry is going. So we're not just reacting to what's coming down the pipeline, but we're anticipating what the needs are that before their researchers even have the capacity to consider.
And then, and Brooke, you all, from a customer standpoint, are going after small and big. And so that adds another wrinkle of challenge to the long list of startup entrepreneurs' challenges. Love to kind of hear how you guys are thinking about customers and communicating how much the change in technology can help them.
Yeah, I think we're kind of in a category creation area where no one has had simulation systems before, and so this is really a new product for them. And we're also figuring it out a lot because we're on the frontier of a lot of, what do agents look like? What do voice agents look like? How do we build really like robust, reliable, autonomous systems? And so we actually work with startups and enterprises, because startups help us iterate really fast, figure out what works really well in being able to deploy those agents, and then we can bring those learnings to enterprises and be able to really scale up their operations very quickly. And so I think without that really fast iteration loop, we wouldn't be able to have as much value in enterprise, but spanning those two markets is definitely very, very tricky to do as you're trying to play in two very different leagues. I think one of the surprises with our customers has been how I think we originally thought that developers were going to be like the only consumers of our platform. But I think a similar trend to what we saw at Waymo is that like agent quality is not just an engineering problem anymore, it's actually a PM problem, it's a sales problem, it's a leadership problem, because everyone knows what you want the agent to do, right? You want the agent to handle all of your customer interactions seamlessly, or you want it to be able to, handle all of your operations, et cetera. But the question is, like, how do you make the agent better is actually a very technical question. And I think that was true with Waymo as well. Like, where do we invest engineering resources? Where do we invest operational resources? So I think that's been an interesting shift in working with a lot of operations folks at larger enterprises.
And Berit, I know you've thought a lot about how models are getting stronger and how that affects sales. Maybe even talk about how you guys think about those two things, and then competition as well. Interested to hear all of your guys' thoughts on competition, but I'll start with you, Berit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of thoughts flying through my head as both Phoebe and Brooke are talking. A couple things maybe that as it relates to the opportunity, but also kind of what are you navigating as you talk to customers. And we are selling into kind of mid-market and larger enterprises. One thing I'll say is I think AI can be, well, it mostly opens up a ton of opportunity. There's a bit of a double-edged sword where I think a lot of enterprises in particular are sitting there saying, we don't totally know how to navigate everything that's happening. We're trying to figure out how do you, because it's not just a technology adoption problem for them, it's a change management problem, and it's a security question, and they're trying to figure out what is our posture towards AI, and how do we think about privacy and all of these things. So what we've found to be effective with some of those larger companies is trying to be thought partners around so much of the opportunity, I think, for AI startups is to reimagine what are human processes today. So I think a lot of AI companies are sitting, earlier stage companies are sitting in a category creation posture because they're trying to say, what can we do that wasn't possible 2 years ago, a year ago? And that requires some kind of reshaping how people think about budgets and approval processes and all of that. So that's kind of one point on the on kind of how to interface with enterprise customers that I think we've, have found trying to be a thought partner, trying to help navigate through that change management process with them has actually been really effective. And you also asked about competition. I think this is a place where another thing we're seeing, obviously, with AI is it is faster than ever to get to a V0 or, a kind of initial version of the product. And honestly, I think in a lot of cases, the solutions or products or apps that you can get to fully functioning very quickly, those are going to get commoditized. So it's caused us to say, let's go after some of these really kind of more messy workflow or messy data problems, because there's going to be more sustainable value in those. They're not as easy to just replicate with a quick, AI code this for me. But that also means that you kind of have this worry of like, are we moving fast enough? Should we be prototyping faster, or shipping things faster, or do we really need to focus on getting this one really complex problem, nailing it? And so that's something I think we think a lot about, and I don't know that there's one right answer. You have to kind of tackle each problem with that, but it's a fun one.
And for Phoebe and Brooke, how are you guys thinking? I think the way Berit said is like, you guys have all these tools, it's fueling your customer growth, it's fantastic, but it also fuels potential competition. How do you guys think about that?
Well, our largest competitor just got bought this weekend, so
yeah, it's been a
great
big week.
news. Yeah, I think a lot of people are bullish about infrastructure for AI, data for AI. I don't know that there's, I mean, it's not the market that's a problem, right? It's just like how quickly can we execute effectively. We've actually hired a ton of people from our competitors who have burnt out from working at like 16-hour days for these very, I mean, like complex human data orchestration problems, right? It's like operationally very intense. It can feel like a sweatshop if you don't design it well, if you don't design it with human-centered values in mind. So we've brought in all these people who are like very values aligned, and then they're also they're giving us a leg up because of their experiences across all these competitors. So I think in that sense, like our journey to where we are today, not being just another labeling platform, but coming from putting people first and building systems for people, is actually giving us that advantage.
That's great. And I know you've got a 2:00 sales call, so you can wrap us up fast.
Yeah, I think being able to, I mean, yes, we're actually like currently expanding a lot of our work with a big customer, which is what I'm about to go do right now. And I think it's been really exciting to see like how we can expand, like given a single problem, and actually like, I think this customer service operations has been something we've landed in. And I think really like we're so deep in the problem now that we see like this end-to-end journey of like, how do you fit in all these pieces from like simulations to human training to agent assist to monitoring those, that I don't think actually we see that much competition, just because like the market is so vast and there are so many problems out there to solve today. Yeah, I think that so much change is happening.
Go on for a long time, but we'll wrap up now. We said earlier, this is our first annual general meeting in San Francisco, and all three of you are based here in San Francisco, so I think it's a real great indication and representation of how great things are going here in the city. Thank you all so much. Give them a round of applause.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.